CAID. Tonight's guest is Duchess Mora de Buchanan, liaison to the Order of the Rose of CAID, and featuring a live performance by Mesterinde Aasa Thorvaldsdottir from the Kingdom of the West. Me? Ha! It is I, your announcer, Master Bjorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes McBride.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? That was me clicking the unmute button, as you haven't already guessed. How are you? I hope you're having a good week. Happy post-Valentine's Day. And a couple little pieces of business. It was announced over the weekend that the next Royal Court will be on Saturday, March 27th. There is a posting in the Kingdom of CAID group Facebook page about it. So mark your calendars for Their Majesties Panza and Catherine. We'll have a great court. Before we get into the next piece of business, I want to go ahead and bring in my dear friend Bjorn. Bjorn will be here right about now. Hey, Bjorn.
Hello, sir.
How are things in the frozen tundra?
Not tremendously frozen. Some parts of my confines had hail the other day, and other parts were dry as a bone. It just, what can I say? A bear has a large territory to wander.
Right. I've been following my friends back in the Onstiora, especially in the Dallas area, and they're in single digits and below with about 6 inches of snow and rolling blackouts and natural gas low pressure. So they're having a very challenging time.
Yes, my sister who lives in the mid realm, with the wind chill, without the wind chill, it's -8. And with the wind chill, it's -20. And they, it's like her Lord husband shovels snow twice a day. Great cardio for him, so they can actually get the vehicles out. But it's certainly not great for anything else, since it seems to have to being done so often. But we're just thinking good thoughts for all of our friends in the more weather-ravaged areas of our country, which seems to be all over the place except here.
Exactly. So we're very fortunate. And a complete non sequitur is let's talk about something that happened over this weekend too that we were announcing. So based on requests that we have gotten, we have swag for the show now. If you want to go out and actually purchase and wear this logo for whatever reason you may, it is now actually out there and available for you to go out to. So there's a link on the Live from CAID page. And the main thing that we're highlighting, of course, is masks, because it's a talk show. So, of course, you want something that covers your mouth. But look how fashionable she looks, Bjorn.
Oh, absolutely. I saw that and immediately bought some so I could share them with my friends.
Okay, so I got to show you my favorite one that makes me laugh. Okay, so you can get a T-shirt, you can get stickers, but who wouldn't want a Live from CAID shower curtain? I mean, that's probably the highlight of our day.
It's hypnotic. All those moons. And what else would one expect near a shower curtain?
Exactly. I mean, anyway, so hopefully when you're taking a shower, you'll think of Bjorn and I. So, no, that's not a selling point?
I don't think it's a selling point at all.
Oh, well. All righty. Well, on that note, what do you have for us for arts and sciences this week?
Thank you, sir. So a couple of things I'd like to talk about. One of them is thank you so very much for the people that have been sending information in for our arts and sciences website section. I greatly appreciate it. A lot of these things I see on my own because I'm doing research every week to try and find nice things to put out in front of us. But every so often I get some really, really great information through emails or through private messages. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the actual first Jorvik all thing digital occurrence for 2021. Now, for many of us who have been fortunate enough to go to Jorvik. Jorvik is the York Archaeological Trust's Viking era center that is in York in Northern England. And it is a phenomenal place. A lot of us who have been fortunate enough to travel there have made specific pilgrimages, if you will, to York to see this portion of the York Archaeological Trust. And they have had any number of bits of adversity, from the floods that destroyed certain portions of the parts of the building to various things they've had to do to move very, very precious sites during other natural disasters. But through it all, Jorvik has been a phenomenal resource, and they have decided to step it up this year since people can't visit by having the Jorvik Viking Center all thing. Now, originally, I have said almost the beginning that we started this almost a year ago that I wasn't really going to spend a lot of time talking about pay sites because money is tight right now. And therefore, I've only mentioned it one or two times. And this will be one of those times. The Jorvik Viking thing digitally, which started today and runs through Saturday, has any number of really cool things to do. But they do cost money. For example, they had a opening of the archives, and that would cost you, and I think that's going to be tomorrow at 7 p.m. their time. So that's going to be around 11 a.m. our time here on the West Coast. And it is exactly as it says. It is a behind the scenes at the portions of the archaeological center that they have items. They have archaeological finds, but they haven't yet completed refurbishing them or cleaning them or putting them out to be seen on display. And so this is something for you can go to. Now it's going to be tomorrow, and it will cost you £6, which is about $8.37 right now, based upon the pound sterling being so for every dollar, it's 0.72 pound sterling. Friday, they're having another celebration in the Richard Hall, and that's going to be £12. So that's about $25. Something that I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't let folks know about earlier, but they are having for £55, which is just under $80, a mead tasting with the Lancashire Mead Company. Now, they actually had packets, but I don't think they would have shipped them to the United States. But it's kind of cool that you could actually partake of that. This upcoming Saturday, they're having something called an evening with Einar, and that's going to be about $22, $23. And that is Einar is the gentleman who did the music for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. He also is part of the Vardruna Nordic folk group. So they've got all these really great things that you can go and see about, and including a Jorvik tour. Now, these things do cost something, but they are streamed online. And because so many of these archaeological trusts in UK have been hampered, in some instances almost brought to being permanently closed due to the lack of income. For those of you that are so inclined, or those of us who have been fortunate enough to go to Jorvik and just want to visit the place again digitally, then by all means, I would look that up, because it is a fantastic way to look at really some of the neatest Viking era finds from the north of England. So the second thing I wanted to talk about.
Well, that was weird. I guess he really didn't want to talk about a second thing. I assume he'll be back in a moment. And I'll keep an eye out for him. So until that time, I will play the role of Bjorn and talk about who our first guest is for the evening. So our first guest of the evening is the liaison to the Order of the Rose, Duchess Mora de Buchanan. And we're going to bring her on now and talk about the Order of the Rose and just how the order works. So let's bring her on in. And we'll wait for Bjorn to come back. Oh, he'll be here in a moment. And we'll go ahead and bring her. Oh, wait a second. So, Your Grace, just a moment. Bjorn is back. And I just remind him never to touch whatever button he just hit.
I do apologize. I had no idea what that was all about. I'm so very sorry.
That's why we do this live, because it's just amazing, right? It's flawless.
I have no idea even where I cut out. So
you were talking about just getting ready to talk about the second site.
Okay. So as I said, the month of February is Black History Month in the United States, and for those of us who participate in medieval recreation or Renaissance recreation, that means people of color and folks of African descent. Medievalist.net has a very interesting article and also a video about the possibility that an epidemic may have caused a population collapse in Central Africa in the early Middle Ages. Now, for those of us who are feeling that's a little prescient because of the current pandemic, this is actually ties into on the broader overarching scale of medieval history of the Justinian Plague. And that means the plague that pretty much started the downfall of the Holy Roman Empire. And it's called the Justinian Plague because allegedly the Emperor Justinian was afflicted by it and recovered from it. But it is the proto-plague for what became the Black Death. It's the exact same bacteria, and they're not even sure because the records in the 5th and 6th century being what they are, it's really hard to say how many people perished in that, but they believe that it's upwards of 20 to 30 million people. And at that time, with population density being what it was, that was a greater swath than had even taken place during the Black Death. It also took place over a longer period of time. Apropos of nothing right now, in particular, they're talking about how this Justinian plague may have eradicated almost entire sections of Central Africa, everywhere from Cameroon all the way to the coast. And because of that, they feel that that dearth of population allowed the Bantu languages to sort of take over, and groups come in and repopulate those areas with similar, more common speech. And they believe that because everyone spoke a version of Bantu, even today in modern Africa, 1 out of every 3 Africans speaks one form or one dialect of Bantu. So it was such a prominent language. They feel that equality of understanding meant that it was much easier for spice trade, for gold trade, for ivory trade, up to the colonization done by whites as they entered the continent in the post-16th century history. So it is a very fascinating, and in some ways it's a little unsettling listing of the things that happened and the documentation that they've been able to find. Some of it is very new, and so I hardly recommend that. Once again, it's a situation where it is it's not the greatest subject, but so many things that happened during that time we still don't fully appreciate, and we're only now having some of this information brought to light. So I heartily recommend that you if you are so inclined to look up medievalist.net's site on it and the subsequent videos that follow. So once again, I'm very sorry about the technical problem, and that's our websites for this week.
Yeah, that was odd. That's the first time you've dropped on your end, so we shall move along. But I know our viewers appreciate you highlighting those archaeological events and sites, because I've heard they really dig it. That was an easy one.
I just keep setting up for the spike. I don't know why at this point I should feel surprised.
And people keep watching. That's what surprises me. So would you like to do a much better intro for Her Grace than I attempted while you were gone?
I certainly would. We have joining us as our guest the liaison to the Order of the Rose for the Kingdom of CAID, a absolutely fantastic woman, Duchess Mora de Buchanan, who will be joining us and giving us all the pertinent information about the Order of the Rose.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and bring Her Grace in. She will be here right now. Hello, Your Grace.
Hello. So nice to see you.
It's good to see you. Sorry for the little hiccup earlier, but thank you for sticking around. So, we invited you here this evening to really talk about the Order of the Rose. But before we get to that, let's get a little background for you. Let's see. How many times were we fortunate to have you serve as queen for CAID?
I don't know how many times you were fortunate, but I did serve as queen 3 times.
Oh, each time was a pleasure. So, and so basically, the Order of the Rose is what is received by Her Majesty, by the consort, right? By the consort of the reign at the end of their reign. Is that a good description or a meh description?
That's a good description by the whoever this is the consort, be it a he or a she who is the consort, and it is not a polling order. So by serving the kingdom in that extreme capacity, one automatically becomes a member of the order when they step down.
And didn't the Order of the Rose started on the West Coast? Is that correct?
It did. Now I can't think of the name that she used at the time, but our now Countess Arabella, who has left us again, darn, but she when she was in the West, she actually started the Order of the Rose. And she was using a different name at that time, and of course now I can't think of it.
Okay, so, and it's kind of gone across the known world.
It has. It has.
So every kingdom has their local chapter of the Order of the Rose?
Some of them are slightly different. Some of the kingdoms actually do poll and decide whether or not the stepping down consort's going to be able to join the order, which is very strange. We talked about that briefly, and we all just went, no, that's not a good thing to do. So, but there are some kingdoms that do poll.
Right. And if you've ever been polled, you know how painful that can be.
I have not been, but I'm sure it would be very painful.
So I would say of the peerages, that the Order of the Rose is probably the most exclusive one, right? Because it's set by the ending of one's reign. Now, for the Order of the Rose, what would be kind of like the mission statement? What I know, but could you explain to other people how y'all continue to serve the kingdom as the Order of the Rose?
I don't know that we have a mission statement. I've certainly never heard of it. If we do, if you know, you should speak up and tell me, because you look very much like you know. But really, it's just to try to keep the grace present as much as we possibly can. Most of us work very hard to try to keep the kingdom going, to try to keep as many volunteers going as we possibly can. You'll see Roses working almost all the time at wars and at events, and yeah, when any place else we can insert ourselves, honestly. The
Right,
Roses kind of started inserting ourselves in crown turning and just kind of being present and reminding everyone that they're doing it for the honor of their consort. It's trying to win a tournament is not just about winning the tournament. It's about all the honor that goes into that.
Right. And even during crown turning, the Order of the Rose has a little ceremony that y'all do as you're getting close to the finals, correct?
We do.
And what would that be?
I was wondering if you were going to talk about it.
No, it's not my job. I asked the question.
But yeah, right before the finals begin, I'm assuming this is what you're talking about. The Roses, not just Caidin's Roses, but whatever Roses might happen to be there, we gather around the throne of the Queen and of the 2 consorts who are being fought for in the finals. and just support everybody. And it's really a very nice tradition, because if it's your first time sitting in that hot seat, waiting to find out whether you'll be reigning soon, it's very nerve-wracking. And just knowing that you have a bunch of people around you that will be there for you if you should end up being so fortunate as to become the next consort, the next princess. It's just really lovely to have all those ladies around you saying, letting you know that you'll be there for them. So.
Right. And y'all are weaving the cornets.
That's earlier in the day. That usually happens a lot earlier. Unless of course you're being fought for, in which case you don't weave coronets, but earlier in the day, yes, during the fighting, usually after the second round, all the roses meet in the royal pavilion, and we weave the, not coronets, but the I don't know what do you call those? I guess they're still called coronets. One for the upcoming prince and one for the upcoming princess, and slightly different. Lots of tradition involved there. Lots of little certain specific flowers that have to be included, and ribbons that have to be included. And I still have all three of mine carefully preserved and hanging on the wall.
That's awesome. I mean, that's one of the more, I would say, visible. Oh, wreaths. We have the word wreaths.
Thank you.
Yes. So you can put them up for Christmas too. So that's, I think, more of the visible functions that the order does is around crown. But again, throughout the year, the members of the order go on and kind of continue the work that they were doing while they were on the throne, of supporting and encouraging and setting the examples and shaking the finger every now and then for when it comes to the behavior we would like to see within the society. Pretty much.
It's very true. I really enjoy saying things like, "Excuse me, Sir Knight, I certainly didn't hear what I thought I just heard you say." Yeah, that's one of my fun things. And they get all embarrassed and blush. And
we have another option. It could be garlands. You can wear garlands. So
we call them wreaths. That is correct. Once you said that, it came back to my head.
Very nice. And then you also do fundraising on behalf of the kingdom too, by doing baskets and assorted items like that, correct?
It's very true. Yes, we've done actually a great deal of fundraising for the kingdom, and put a great deal of money into the kingdom, because that's what you're supposed to do. Now I'm tongue-tied, but yes, that is one of our great honors, is to be able to help do fundraising for the kingdom.
And I know, depending on Her Excellency or Her Grace or Their Grace, the baskets usually reflect the skills or the interest of the rose that puts it together, right? Whether it's like baking, or I know like Batista does more trinket type of stuff. So it really is, you kind of get more of a feel for the rose that's sponsoring the basket that's out there too, most of the time.
That's probably true most of the time. Some of us don't have great artistic skills. Not to say that I'm talking about myself, but some of us just don't. So I think every basket I've put together has been slightly different.
Right. Now, we've talked to the liaisons and secretaries of the other peerages, the polling peerages, and they have either charters or statutes, and they are required to meet once a reign and discuss things. Do y'all have like a regular scheduled meeting to get together and discuss things during a reign, or is it more informal?
I would say it's more informal. We don't actually have like statutes or anything like that we have to go by. Our big thing every reign is whenever there's a new princess, we have what we call, or prince or princess, we have what we used to call the princess tea, and now we call it, what do we call it? The consort's tea?
Works for me.
I actually don't know what we call it now, but yeah, we have tea, and it's sometimes actually tea and crumpets and finger sandwiches and things like that, and sometimes it's other things. Sometimes it's mimosas. Sometimes it's just whatever the grandmama decides to do, because the grandmama of the new prince or princess, or I guess grandpapa, as the case may be, would be in charge of the tea, arranging the whole thing and getting caterers or making the food themselves. And I'm, again, not terribly good at that sort of thing. So I usually get someone else to provide the food because, yeah. Although I was my own grandmama once, and that was interesting, and someone else threw the party for me. So that was nice.
Right. So it's not the current reign, it's the reign prior to that.
Right, because whoever's queen at the given time really probably doesn't have the time to arrange for that party.
Right. And I can tell you just from being on the outside of things, I don't think anyone believes that you're just drinking non-alcoholic tea at those gatherings.
There have been some. There have indeed, because if the park or whatever venue doesn't allow alcohol, we certainly would not go against that, for sure. I mean, we really would not ever go against that kind of a rule. So there have been teas where we have been drinking tea, most assuredly.
And I can tell you from my perspective of being in the kingdom and being active in the rapier community that once the rapier community was starting to really kind of coalesce a little bit better and getting a foothold within the kingdom, the support, the visible and the behind the scenes support that the Order of the Rose gave the rapier community during those years as it was growing and trying to get established, it really is key to the foundation it stands on now. If it wasn't without the support of the members of your order, along with the hard work of course, the people in the rapier community and the members of the chivalry that became a very active proponent for them, we wouldn't enjoy the station or the position that we have in the kingdom now. And I've told anyone that would listen, which isn't very many people, that the Order
But they
of
have
the
to listen
Rose,
now, don't they?
yeah, they have to listen now. Well, they can click to a different site. The support we got from the Order of the Rose during those times really is key to where we are now. So I want to, as the liaison, I want to express that thanks, my personal thanks to your order for that. And I've said it over the years too.
It does work both ways, because the rapier community very definitely supports the Roses, very definitely supports the Queen, and not just her champion, but the rapier community itself really, really supports the Queen.
Well, you guys are the cool one. So, I mean, hope this isn't recorded. Anyway, I'm going to now step out for a bit and let Bjorn ask questions, and I'll be back.
Your Grace, hello.
Master Bjorn, it's so good to see you.
It is excellent to see you. I believe Amina's name at the time was Cheryl of Thespis.
Thank you. I could not find it. I had the Thespis, but I couldn't remember the rest of it. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
Yes, and they were until very recently in Altavia, I believe, and I'm not sure where they are, but yes, I remember getting a chance to talk at Sir Robert Dubois' house once, and Her Excellency was there telling us stories about the things that were happening in the late 60s and how the Roses got started. And it has always been, in my opinion, about honor and courtesy, and how gentility is to be displayed. And I think that the consorts, especially at the crown level, truly personify that. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, because you have served as queen often enough, I would say, and who knows, because when we start getting out there again, I have no doubt that His Grace Edward will be on the field again, and I would love that. What do you find you're doing for new Roses personally? What is something that you like to impart? I mean, obviously there's confidentiality, or there are things that are just meant for Rose's ears, but could you share with us some ways that you like to assist new Roses in their position?
There's a wonderful tradition that at the very first tournament after crown turning, or I'm sorry, very first tournament after stepping up, the Roses accompany the new queen around the site, and we greet each individual household, pavilion, warband, whatever, as we go around the site. And usually the new queen gives some kind of a little token to everybody. But it's to me, it's always been we're here for you. It's always been you'll never be alone because one of us will be with you. In fact, we usually tell the guards to go away because, she's surrounded by roses and roses have thorns. So there's no chance anything bad will happen to Her Majesty when she's with us. But that's one of the traditions that I've always really loved, is just accompanying the Queen as she makes her rounds and introduces herself to her, all of her populace that first time. And aside from that, I just like to be there for them. Just kind of anytime you have anything that you don't know the answer to, you need some advice on something, whatever it might possibly be, please always call on me. And a great many of them have. So that's a nice thing.
Thank you. One of the things that CAID is very fortunate to be a part of is the small but growing number of male consorts who now are in the rows. I was very fortunate enough to know the first gentleman, a duke, in Anstiora, when his lady wife, the Duchess, won crown by right of arms. Then, of course, there was Ethelmark just a year or so ago. And then when the BOD passed the resolutions to allow same-sex consorts, we have had a few additional. Is there, because we have the Ladies of the Rose and then the Order of the Rose, but depending upon the kingdom, which now I believe there are half dozen kingdoms that have male members of the Rose, they have everything from Lord of the Rose to kind of a play on words, a laddie of the Rose, which is fine if you have a Scots persona. Is there a particular title that Caidins use?
I've only ever heard us call him the Lord of the Rose. And actually, I have heard that very rarely. We just call ourselves Roses and leave it at that, honestly. I've probably slipped up sometime in this conversation and said ladies when I meant all of us. But we just call ourselves the Roses.
So for the Rose, in history, now, as a bardic laurel, one of the things I pride myself on is trying to know about the history of our society. And I've been around for not all of it, but for a lot of it. And one of the things that I find is interesting, and I'm not entirely certain how it works in CAID, so I was going to ask you about it, is when a consort steps down and they receive their county or their duchy, they are a royal peer. And but in sometimes past, roses were a patent of arms, and then they weren't, depending upon various factors. In CAID, I'm assuming that members of the rose itself is not armigerous, but the title that they receive upon stepping down is where the peerage is given.
We've actually gone into great discussion about this. There is not an extra peerage. Your peerage is your county or your duchy. You don't have an extra peerage as a bonus because you were the consort. So there's not an extra peerage that goes with that.
From what I understand, in ancient history, in the 60s and 70s, they actually changed the color of the rose for that kingdom, where roses that had a patent attached were red and roses that didn't were white. Now for CAID, our rose, what is the color of the rose that's used on the livery?
Our rose is yellow.
Yellow or gold, I thought.
And there's a great many kingdoms that have the yellow or gold rose. I know one of the times that we went to Penzek, we very carefully, Master Riordan very carefully researched every single. I'm sorry, my brain is going blank here, but it researched every kingdom for me so that I would know what color rose to present to each of the various ladies that I would meet and lords that I would meet while I was there. And they're really every color. I think white was the most rare. I think there was only one or two white kingdoms that used white roses, and a few actually have different flowers entirely. But I think the most common probably was red, but gold was right behind.
As from what I understand, some of the heralds early in our history, because of the War of the Roses, were trying to avoid obvious ties to a red or a white rose. So I thought that the patents finally being removed from the rose and the rose itself being just the rose, as you say, made it a little bit easier for folks to understand. Now, if I may ask, so roses, when they accompany the crown, when they accompany the queen or the king consort, and you say that you sometimes dismiss any guards because roses have thorns, I have to ask: has anyone ever been like impertinent to a group, a gathering of roses when they're surrounding their queen or king consort? That seems very dicey.
It's definitely happened. It's definitely happened. And they are met by one or two roses who stand and leave the group and escort them away. Yeah, it's definitely happened.
Wow. I hope most of those were just most mundanes. I certainly hope it wasn't. My goodness. Now, in your position as a member of the Rose, what do you think what is the most important thing for you to do when you were on the throne for the king, for Edward? What did you feel was your most prominent role?
That's very difficult. In my mind, I would say partner, because you want to make sure that the queen or the consort has, I don't want to say standing because that's not what I mean, but so that the king has his support, that he has that person with him at all times, whatever happens, whatever he might need. In all honesty, also to keep him in line a little bit. It's like, Your Majesty, I'm sure that you didn't actually mean to say that. Yeah, that I've seen quite a few consorts that have had to say that. But really, it's just to be the partner. It's to be there with them. I thought, my darling Lord husband, I thought I was going to have to do all the speaking because he's a very, very quiet man. But anyone who's ever seen His Grace Duke Edward on the throne would not know that, because first event, he was up on his feet. Is everybody having fun? And then I knew that I would not have to do all the talking for the reign.
Well, we're definitely glad for his not being a wallflower. So
Exuberance. We'll call it exuberance.
Indeed, exuberance it is. The last question I have for you is, so the roses have many different compartments within. They assist with regalia. They assist with the maintenance and upkeep of some of the finery that is worn by the crown, and catalog it to take care of it. And I understand that is currently something Viscountess Larissa is sort of helping to manage for regalia. And that's my point is, there are some kingdoms where if you were a prince or a princess consort, that you were not inducted into the Order of the Rose, but in CAID we do. Is that correct?
We for a minute I thought you were going to be talking about viscounties, which CAID also does recognize viscountesses and viscounts as roses, which many kingdoms do not. But I don't think that is what you were asking. You were asking if we poll. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, there was a determination was made some years ago where CAID does include viscountesses and viscounts in your group, but
correct.
That is not a universal thing in the
society. It is not universal. No, it's not. In fact, I think very few kingdoms do. But that was actually Countess Arabella had a great deal to do with that, because she was very determined. That she said, if there had been such a thing when I created the order, of course I would have included them. But when she created the order, there were no viscounts or viscountesses. So there was no, she did not verbally include them. But she has been very, very vocal about it since, saying that, of course, they should be. So we always do with the tournament, the Rose tournament that we have at Great Western War. We always go to great pains to make sure that all the visiting viscountesses and viscounts and anyone who would be in their kingdom would have been a rose if they had done that, then we do include them. We have had one or two viscounts who were the consort for their reign who have joined us at Great Western War, and it's just so much fun.
That's fantastic. I mean, as when I spoke with Her Excellency about it, she said because she was queen in 1968, there were hardly any kingdoms, certainly little in principalities, but Corpora is quite strict on the fact that the royal peers are the king and queen, the prince and princess, crown prince and princess, and then the heirs of those respective, plus dukes and duchesses, counts and countesses, and then the viscounty is also considered a royal peer. As such, I think CAID made the proper determination, and hopefully the rest of the kingdoms will jump on board one of these days.
I hope they will. It's fair. I mean, that person very definitely ruled over their, I mean, maybe not their kingdom, but their principality. They very definitely ruled over that principality. They sat in the chair, the big chair. They made the big decisions. They did the hard things. And the incredible amount of service that goes along with it. So honoring that incredible amount of service seems to me the right thing to do.
Before I let Laertes get in here, you actually brought up something that I did want to discuss, and it is at Great Western War, every year, we have what is now referred to as the Valkyrie Rose Tournament. Would you mind telling the folks at home a little bit about that tournament?
It was the very first time, was my very first reign, was the first Valkyrie Rose Tournament, and Duchess Colfina was the sponsor of that tournament. And well, not the sponsor, but very definitely the driving force that made it happen. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, fun thing for the two of us, especially, and for all the other roses that were there. I think we had a grand total of maybe 10 or 11. And each at that time, each of the roses was able to sponsor one belted fighter and one unbelted fighter for the armored competition, and one white scarf and one non-white scarf for the rapier competition. And the rules have changed a little bit as time has gone on, and it's still pretty much the same now, although now a great many of us will sponsor 2 unbelts and 2 unscarved or non-mods or whatever we call that person these days. But it's a really, really nice way to get recognition for some of these fighters. And my favorite part about the whole thing is that, yes, you have a winner. You have someone who comes out on top in the martial list, but the honor goes to the fighter who was deemed to be the most honorable and chivalrous in the course of the day. Occasionally it ends up being the same fighter, but I think it's wonderful that the whole tournament is about honor and chivalry. And the roses are all polled to see, who did you see that was doing something amazing? And so we all are paying even more attention than usual to make sure that we really, really watch the fighting and really, really see who's exemplifying those traits that we really want to see.
Thank you so much. I was very fortunate to actually fight when I was able to come back fighting. I was able to fight in the last Rose tournament that we had at our last Great Western War before the plague descended upon our lands. And I have to say the chivalry and courtesy and honor on display. I believe the roses. There's that phrase: "The lightest touch commands obedience," and I do feel that the roses did exactly that. Just their very presence. If anybody had any thoughts about being anything other than completely honorable, they just melted away in the presence of so much grace and courtesy and refinement, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. But I wanted to
prize for the winner, the prize for the chivalry winner, for both rapier and I think for both. But I think maybe one year the rapier fighters got a small shield. Boy, I can't think of what anything's called tonight. I'm definitely getting old. But there's either a banner or a buckler that with the a rose painted on it, and the chivalry and the Valkyries, and I know that I love to walk around Great Western War and see the banners being displayed proudly by the people who have won the tournament in the previous years. It's just really a nice thing to see. And you usually see quite a few of them flying over people's encampments.
Well, it's certainly an honor to see the victor and to occasionally, in my case, cross swords with the victor. If not in the tournament, then afterwards at pickup fights, just to learn some. But I wanted to thank you so much, Your Grace, for all of your information about the Order of the Rose and our not only just how it is particular CAID, but the society level award itself. And I just wanted to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I was very honored to be here. Sorry I didn't know all the answers, but
Oh, that's okay. I mean, it's just a
I know
conversation.
now you're really going to get me.
I know. Well, and I'm glad that Bjorn brought up the Valkyrie Rose study, because I was going to ask a couple of questions. But I can tell you, two of my students, His Excellency Nico and Master Gary, had been recognized with most chivalrous, and they fly their banners at every event. So they know the obligation and the recognition that comes with being seen in that light at the Valkyrie Rose tourney. So
I love to see the banners flying. It means so much to us to see the banners flying.
Yeah, they're awesome. So now we come to the part where there's more questions to answer for you, but this one maybe not directly related to the Order of the Rose. So Bjorn, what is the name of this week's game?
This evening's game is A Rose is a Rose.
That's right. So you look so enthused. That's the best part.
Trivia is not my
list. So I have a list here, and you need to tell me, I'm going to give you a name, and you need to tell me if it's a exotic rose or a French actress. So you got a 50-50 shot, okay? So it's either a rose or a French actress. So let's try Rive Gauche. Is that a rose or an actress?
That's a rose.
Maybe you are correct. It's a green one, by the way, in case you're wondering. How about the Osiria?
I'm still going to say, no, that one sounds more like a French actress, but I bet it's a rose. I'll go with the French actress.
Oh, you should have gone with the rose.
I should have.
That's a rose. How about
half of its name?
How about Fanny Vallet?
Oh, that has to be a French actress.
That was kind of a give me. How about the Felicity Parmentier? Parmentier.
Rose.
That is a rose. Very nice. See, you're doing great. How about Rainbow Rose?
Oh, that's a French actress. Rainbow Rose.
Think, or a dancer.
Or a dancer.
Yeah. No, that's actually a rose.
Is it really?
I know. Well,
that one again? What?
Rainbow Rose. Yes.
Wow.
Now taking the stage, Rainbow Rose. Sorry. Went back to my college years. How about?
I hope that wasn't you.
No. Do I look like a rainbow? Anyway, Carol Bouquet.
I'm going to go with the French actress.
That is a French actress. Very nice. So a couple more and we'll be done. Papagiano.
I hope that's a rose, because that sounds like a really neat name for one. So I'm going to say rose, just in hope.
It is. You should look it up. It's a beautiful rose.
I'm going to.
Two more. Vagina Giacante.
How do you spell that? Can you use it in a sentence? No, just kidding. I'm going to go with the actress for that one, although it sounds more Italian than French. But
yeah, and the last one, Claude Monet.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's not a French actress, so we'll go with the rose. I know there's a Monet rose. Maybe that's it.
You are correct. You're very nice. And just looking at your results, you actually got all the French actress names correct. So you should teach a class.
I guess I should.
Anyway, well, that's all we have for this evening. Again, Your Grace, it's first off wonderful to see you. It's been much too long. And thank you for coming in and just giving people a little bit more insight on the Order of the Rose and what the members do, and that the work continues once the consort steps down from the throne. It's not one and done. It is, as you exemplify, along with members of your order, the work, the station, the visibility continues, even though you don't have the big hat and the big chair anymore. So thank you again for keeping up that work and keeping support the kingdom and keeping us more on the true path. Personally, I do appreciate that.
Thank you again for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
I know you're up in the frozen tundra of CAID. So
it really is frozen up here. We really did have 2 or 3 feet of snow for a while there.
That's crazy. Well, enjoy it. You know, if he had 2 to 3 feet of snow, does that mean His Grace couldn't walk out of the house? I mean, because it's like, here?
It was pretty bad.
Did you give him one of those big red pointed hats so you could just see where he is in this? Anyway, enough of that. Have a great evening. Again, it was great to see you. And we'll see each other once we'll be able to get back together again in person.
I look forward to that.
All right. I'll see you later.
Good night.
I had to get short jokes in for His Grace. I mean, he would expect no less from me.
Yes, I suppose so. But, you know, that was such low-hanging fruit.
Well, that's the only fruit he can have.
Oh, man. We're both in trouble. Just saying.
So my favorite was his stepping down court, where he's wearing green and red, and it's time for him to leave. And Cora, who was much younger at that time, runs up and yells, "Santa, you're needed at the North Pole," and grabs his hand, and they walk out of court. That was fantastic.
Oh, and by the way, just so you know, the Papageno rose is named after the lead baritone character from Mozart's opera The Magic Flute, and it's based upon a papageni, which is a parrot. So it's supposed to be a colorful, almost feathery sort of rose.
Oh, yeah, I saw pictures. I didn't bring them in, but they were all
I only know this because I did the role like 30 years ago, so you know, just happened to know.
Oh, but just happened. So what else do you happen to know about this evening, my friend?
We have a lovely entertainer who will be joining us from the Kingdom of the West. Mesterinde Aasa Thorvaldsdottir will be joining us. A phenomenal performer, someone who many of us recently saw on her performance in Between Two Peers, and is now, we're very fortunate to have her joining us this evening.
All right, so let's go ahead and bring her on. She's been patiently waiting, and she's going to be on right now. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for hanging out. We got a little talky because we loved seeing Her Grace. I don't get to see her enough.
It was so much fun to watch.
Oh,
So I greatly enjoyed learning more about the Order of the Rose.
Well, very nice. So you're in the Kingdom of the West. Where in the West are you?
I am in the Principality of the Mists in the province. It's a province of Southern Shores, which mundanely is San Jose, California.
Oh, very nice. So, and how long have you been in the SCA?
I've been in the SCA for, let me see, it is just about 19 years, like right about this time of year.
Right.
I got started my freshman year of college.
Nice. And did you come in and just immediately get involved in Bardic, or how did that come about?
So if you ask my mother, I have been singing since I could talk, or before I could talk. So I was already a singer and performer when I found the SCA. And yes, I did pretty much jump both feet first into doing Bardic stuff. Although for my first several years of playing, I was still a college student. So, you know, I was at events as I could be, but I didn't like really jump into the Bardic scene until about 10 or 11 years ago when I entered my very first bardic competition, which was the Bard of the Mists competition, and did not win that one. And but some years later, I did actually win the Bard of the Mists competition and served for a year as the Bard of the Mists, which was just a wonderful experience.
That's awesome. So, as a bard, do you perform a lot of stuff that you've written, or do you take other pieces? What is your strength, would you say?
The majority of what I perform is pieces that I've written myself. That will be either poetry or songs. I very rarely write my own music. That is something that I aspire to, but haven't got to yet. Most of the time, what I do is I will take an existing medieval tune, or sometimes I will do modern filk as well. I've had a great deal of fun doing that. But I've written several songs to tunes from the Cantigas de Santa Maria, for instance. I've also used dance tunes, because one of the other things that I do is dance.
So you say dance tunes, and I'm thinking 80s, but that's probably not it.
No. I mean like Renaissance English and Italian dance
Right.
music.
15 years.
Not industrial dance music, which
Yeah,
you
it might be 80s, but it's going to be 1580s, 1590s. Yeah.
I stand corrected. So, what would you say is your biggest inspiration when you're writing? Is it music or?
If I am writing a song, most of the time I will have already chosen what tune I'm going to be using. So I'll look at the structure of if I'm resetting words to a song that already had words, I look at the structure of that and just sort of let it speak to me. And sometimes, like in one of the pieces I'll be performing this evening, it takes a little while for the song to tell me what it's going to be about. But once I get it, it goes quickly enough. Yeah, sometimes if I'm writing poetry, it'll be usually a word or two, or a concept, that'll just build. Sometimes there'll be a phrase that comes to me, and I'll just build the piece around that. It varies widely from piece to piece.
Nice. So speaking of the pieces this evening, I understand you can perform 2 pieces. Would you like to tell us about the first one?
Absolutely. So my first one is, as I mentioned, I've done several pieces to tunes from the Cantigas de Santa Maria. This is Cast Out Cold, which I have written to the tune of Quen Querque na Virgen Fia, which is Cantiga de Santa Maria number 167. So that is apparently most instrumentalists know the cantigas more by the numbers than by the words, and the vocalists the other way round. What a shock.
All right. Well, I'll give the floor over to you.
All right. Cast out cold and cast out sadness, revel in the warming weather. Earth's renewal greet with gladness, welcome in the spring together. Springtime in exuberant glory paints the hillsides bright with flowers. New life claims its territory, bursting forth in blooming bowers. Cast out cold and cast out sadness, revel in the warming weather. Earth's renewal greet with gladness, welcome in the spring together. Soft the gentle breezes carry choirs of birdsong sweetly ringing. Springtime sends her emissary, hope of spring's rebirth she's bringing. Cast out cold and cast out sadness, revel in the warming weather. Earth's renewal greet with gladness, welcome in the spring together. Tender verdant leaves unfurling, quick and green the woods awaken. Beasts from winter sleep unfurling, greet the sun with faith unshaken. Cast out cold and cast out sadness, revel in the warming weather. Earth's renewal greet with gladness, welcome in the spring together.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that this evening. That was fun.
Yeah, it is. It's one of my favorite things that I've written.
Very nice. And you have a second piece you can perform this evening?
I do. This one is a poem. The form is called a sestina. It's built instead of on rhymes. It has a set of end words. That's the word at the end of each line. And throughout the poem, there are only 6 of them, despite the poem being 6 full and a final half verse long. So the end words repeat in a different order each time, and there's a set pattern to how they're reset. So one of the fun things about writing them is once you've got your first stanza done, you know the last line or the last word of every single line for the rest of the piece. And the trick then is making it all make sense.
Well, I look forward to hearing it. The floor is yours.
All right. This is The Path Between. Today, I asked myself, what is the point of tracing all these geodesic lines, connecting dots with no significance? The journey of my life is not a race. I do not eagerly pursue the dark, but rather take my time, meandering. But I have found my mind meandering in circles, spiraling into the point where madness echoes softly in the dark. The pathways out are straight, unswerving lines. Take one step off and plummet. Down I race to lose all sense of self-significance. Does my existence hold significance? Or is it just a path meandering between the shadows of a greater race? Still, I must wait until I reach the point where phantom fears dissolve into the dark before I trace my future's tangled lines. Phantasmagoric dreamscapes blur the lines of death and waking. What significance have bitter pools of words spilt in the dark? I dream in broken verse, meandering through cobweb-clinging thoughts, then, at the point of stirring, find myself still in that race. Then on a train of thought my pencils race in frantic pace to form the bitter lines between which one must read to miss the point. It's clear that they have some significance, but lose their meaning in meandering from thought to thought on paths traced in the dark. The furthest corners of the mind are dark and dusty with the leavings of a race of long-forgotten words, meandering in parabolic curves between the lines of silence. There is some significance in knowing when no words will make your point. In my meandering, I walk the lines from point to point, without a need to race the dark. My life has no significance.
Wow, very nice.
Thank
Very
you.
clever. I enjoyed it. I'm going to go ahead and bring Bjorn in.
Absolutely.
Okay, Bjorn.
That was fantastic. Thank you so very much. Sestinas are, it's a lost art that we're capturing really in the SCA and elsewhere, but they're not done too often because of the complication, and that was exquisite.
Thank you very much. It was a beast to wrestle with when I was writing it, for sure. And fun fact, it is the only sestina to date that I have successfully completed.
Well, very fine job. So,
well, thank you very much.
That's one more than I've done. So,
hey.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening and sharing your talent and sharing the two pieces that you performed. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, we will get together in person at some point, maybe a Great Western War. And
that would be delightful. I have enjoyed myself very much being on here, and thank you so much for having me.
Right. Well, thank you again. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully our paths will cross soon.
I certainly hope so.
Okay, doke. Have a good night.
You too.
Wow, that was cool. I like the construction on that last piece.
And it's also really nice to hear cantigas. I like contrafracta. I've always enjoyed taking words to existing music, and I mean, you know, when you do it the way Weird Al does it, it's a filk. But when done in that manner, it's just as clever and beautiful. So I was very thankful for Mesterinde Aasa to come here with us this evening.
That was great. And of course, seeing her grace was wonderful too. So that's our show for this evening. Let's talk about next week. Next Monday, you know, we've been talking to the secretaries and liaisons to the polling peerages, and then we expanded to talk to the Order of the Rose. And now we're going to kind of venture back out of kingdom. And we're going to be looking at some of those unique and special orders and groups and recognitions in other kingdoms. And we're going to be traveling through and speaking to representatives of those. Now, up on this coming Monday night, we're going to be talking to Master Avery from the Kingdom of Monstiora. He's a member of the Lions of Monstiora, which is a special and unique recognition there that comes with, honestly, a very cool right and privilege with it that we'll talk about next week that no one would ever grant, especially to me here in the kingdom. But if that's not a tease, I don't know what is it. And who do we have lined up for performance next week?
Well, we are very fortunate in that we are having someone rejoin us. And so Viscountess Ciela, who of the West, who was with us relatively early on in our run last year, has graciously consented to come again and sing for us. And as a former bard of the West, and as someone who sat the thrones in the Principality of the Mist, she has seen all versions of the society and has a wonderful take on artistry, plus just an amazing voice. So we're really, really happy to have Her Excellency coming back.
Awesome. So that sounds like a fun show next week too. Well, first off, thank you, my friend. Thank you for being here again this week. Everything that you do, I do appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
And to all the viewers out there, thank you for joining us. And once again, we'll be back next week when we will be live
From CAID.
See you then.